So thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Andrea. I am your moderator for tonight's discussion. I'm with Inspire Advantage. With me, I have Aryaman Gupta, who will be introducing himself momentarily. He is also part of our Inspire Advantage team. Tonight's workshop is all about cars. So it's Cars Crash Course. Just before we get going into the nitty gritty of tonight's presentation, I do have a couple of housekeeping rules, so to speak. First and foremost, this webinar is recorded and you will receive a recording in your inbox within a day or two. In terms of how long we're looking at running tonight's discussion, we're looking at running it for an hour. That's always a question that we get a lot of. So we'll be going through quite a few topics tonight. We'll be speaking about a complete breakdown of the car section, effective reading and reasoning strategies, time management tips. We'll be going over two questions from the actual MCAT, especially in regards to cars. And then we love to leave some time towards the end for a Q&A. So as we're going through this discussion, we highly recommend you leverage the chat, put your questions in. We want to hear from you. We want to make this interactive. We're super excited. Before I pass it on, I just want to take a quick moment to introduce who we are. As mentioned, we're Inspire Advantage. We're a globally recognized admissions consulting and test prep firm with over 16 years of experience. We specialize in helping students gain admission to top graduate healthcare programs such as medicine, residency, dental, veterinary, PA, nursing schools, et cetera, with a 94% acceptance rate, something we're incredibly proud of. And we believe in starting early, which is why we offer something called pre-health advising for college freshmen. So what does our team do? How does our team help students? We help build a tailored academic timeline, including course selection and GPA strategy. We help find impactful experiences like research, shadowing, clinical and non-clinical volunteering, extracurriculars, leadership roles. And then we help make their application stand out from the rest with a stellar personal statement and interview prep. Now, these lay a strong foundation to help our applicants differentiate themselves and make that lasting impression. That is the goal. That is what we want. In addition, our tutors provide personal one-on-one test prep for MCAT, DAT, and the GRE. We begin with diagnostic tests, and then we move into custom study plans and interim progress tracking. Students do see a score increase. On average, it's about 15 points on the MCAT with our 45 plus hours of tutoring, and then our 60-hour programs actually even have a score guarantee. So for the MCAT, it's 515, it's 21 points for the DAT, and then 320 for the GRE. When it's time to apply, so after you've gone through all of that, we have something called an all-inclusive application program, which offers unlimited support through the entire application cycle. So this includes crafting a personalized narrative and school list, perfecting those personal statements and secondary essays with unlimited edits, providing interview prep, scholarship guidance, and of course that waitlist strategy. We're by our students' side until they receive their acceptance. Our goal is very clear, it's very simple. It's to really create the most competitive candidates and applications, ensuring our students shine in the competitive admissions landscape, and it gets more and more competitive each year. If you'd like to learn more about us, we do offer personalized consultations via video, phone, or email. No matter where you are in the application process, we're here to support you. We're here to help you. We want you to be part of our community and our network. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to pass it over to Aryaman to introduce himself and get going with tonight's discussion.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining and spending some of your Thursday night with us. Like mentioned, my name is Aryaman. A little bit about myself. So I'm actually from the Midwest in Indiana. I'm here right now with some family, which has been nice. But I wanted to get out and see kind of the rest of the world. So I went to Duke in North Carolina for my undergrad degree in biomedical engineering. And I actually wasn't really planning on becoming a doctor or going to med school. But I worked for a little bit as an engineer and realized it was not the correct path for me. So made a switch, went into medicine, very fortunate to have been accepted to Johns Hopkins, where I did my med school there up in Baltimore. And I loved it so much that I actually stayed back. So I'm actually currently an interventional radiology resident at Johns Hopkins. I've been doing, and been in the counseling, tutoring, admission circles for many years now, both with Duke and Johns Hopkins, and have really been fortunate to help a lot of students with the MCAT and the admissions process. So have a bit of experience and knowledge on what goes into it. And so, hats off to all of you who are going through this now. I know it's a cumbersome journey, but I promise it is worth it at the end. And I hope that tonight you'll learn some kind of nifty tips and tricks to help you prepare for the MCAT. All right, so let's get started. A couple disclaimers ahead of tonight. One is I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible. So when we get towards the end, we're going to go through a couple questions, and I want you guys to all participate as best as possible because I think that's the best way to learn. But we'll get to that. Another disclaimer, cars is really tricky, right? It doesn't come logically to a lot of people, and it didn't come logically to me. I had the engineering mindset, and it took me a long time to figure out what cars was and how to attack it. But there is some strategy involved, and we'll talk about that. And really, the only surefire way to improve on cars is through practice. It's one of those sections that is just so important for you to practice and see as many questions and be exposed to them as you can, more than any other section. But let's talk about it in a little more detail. So it does feel random at times, especially when you're taking for the first time. It's hard to figure out what they want you to know. And the answers and the language and the verbiage can be confusing, but there are some patterns. So a little bit about it, it's a 90-minute section. It's about usually 52 to 53 questions. So you want to plan for about a minute and a half per question, and half your passages are going to be humanities based and half are going to be social sciences based. Each passage is about 5 to 7 questions each. So one, you can kind of separate into what kind of passage is this? Is it humanities or is this a social sciences? And then when you're reading it, you're going to want to pick out certain things. Like they're going to use once you read a lot of passages, you'll see sentences that just jump out to you that just seem like that is bound to be a question. It's like, it's going to be an analogy or simile or metaphor, or it's going to have something that's contrasting A versus B. And those are the moments that the test makers want to test you on. So sometimes it's going to be really helpful to think like a test maker when you read these passages. Just something jump out that it's like begging to be turned into a question. All right. Another problem with cars, and I think a common pitfall, is that it's just very tiring. I don't think many of us, obviously if you love books, that's amazing, but I don't think many of us are spending 90 minutes reading really dense and verbose passages on a regular basis. And so it's easy to get tired, especially in the middle of an 8-hour MCAT exam, where it's brutal. So it's easy to get tired, but you have to treat each passage like it's the first in the section and give it your full and undivided attention, because that's only when you're going to be able to pick out those key sentences like I was talking about. So when you break down a passage, there's a few things. You kind of want to read through it all. While you're reading each paragraph, try to figure out what the intent or the purpose of that one specific paragraph was. Can you boil it down or sum it up into a phrase so that you can remember, right? It's very easy to just read and then just glaze over the entire passage and realize you gathered nothing from it. So if you intentionally take each paragraph and sum it into an argument, and you keep doing that, then you're going to do what's called active reading, right? It's not just passive. And then as a whole, what is actually this author trying to argue in this passage, right? They're going to have some sort of a thesis statement. And can you identify that? And then lastly, how are they justifying that thesis statement? So it's kind of like thinking about it backwards, right? When you all write an essay, you typically start out with an outline, right? You have your thesis statement, and then you figure out in paragraph 1, this is the point I want to make, and this is how I want to support it. Paragraph 2, you do the same paragraph 2, right? So in cars, you're actually kind of doing it backwards. You're figuring out what is the thesis statement, and then what are those bullet points that the author wanted for each paragraph to make their argument. And that's really going to help you to not get lost and answer the questions correctly. All right. Like I said already, spot key sections. So, the introduction, the conclusion, what are the supporting and contrasting points for each specific thesis of each paragraph? And then how do those build together, right? You're going to see passages where it's kind of like linear, right? This is the argument, this is it supported, it keeps building, and then you get to the conclusion and it's all, full force. This is the argument, right? You're going to see some passages that are kind of like this, right? Here's the argument that they start with. They build it up, and then they say, well, actually, and then it's like a however statement, right? And then they kind of end on a different point, and it's different than what they maybe necessarily had started, or they're refuting the point that they had started. So you're going to want to bring it all together at the end. All right. A lot of these passages are complex, mainly because of the language that is used. A lot of these are excerpts from books or reviews or articles or journals, right? This is not your generic like article from ESPN, right? So you're gonna want to try to understand as much of it as you can. And I know it's hard. Some of this language is not what we use on a daily basis. Um, I probably don't use the word, like pragmatic, more than every couple of days, if not even more spaced out than that. So figure out what the language is saying. Like I said before, break down each paragraph into a phrase or a sentence, and then what are the supporting points? At the end of reading a passage, you should be able to describe that passage to somebody else, right? The best way to show that you know something is to be able to teach it to somebody else. And that's what you want to be able to do. If I read a passage, I should be able to turn to the person next to me and say, this is the argument that's being made. This is how they're supporting it. And this is how they're concluding it. All right, I think we're going to take a minute to check in and see if people have any questions. I'll pass it off to Andrea.
It's just taken a second. So sorry about that, folks. So yes, this is a really quick check-in. I want to see if there's any sort of questions that we can answer thus far. We have a ton more to go through, so I just want to check in with our audience, as well as let you know that for being here live with us and joining us, we'd love to offer you a 10% discount off any one of our programs. And that's just a little thank you for being here. As well as, again, remind you of that free consultation that we do have available in case you have any sort of in-depth questions about sort of your particular situation, or the application timeline, or if you'd like more assistance from one of our awesome colleagues. We want to make sure that you know that that's available to you. Yes. I don't see any questions in the chat though. So Ariaman, I'll give it back to you, and we can keep going. I know we have the workshop coming up.
Yes, and apologize, if I'm talking fast. Just want to kind of get through this because I think the end where we go to the questions is where I want to spend the bulk of the time and help you all to put this into practice. So let me know, just put in any questions in the chat along the way if you want me to repeat something or go back. All right, common traps to avoid in cars. Number one, overthinking the passage. So it's tricky because it can go both ways, right? A lot of the times you'll actually find in cars that going with your gut actually works out. Somehow in our brains, in the recesses of it, it just picks up on things that we may not be thinking about, and that it just gives you a feeling that this is going to be the right answer. So if you're really not sure what the answer is, sometimes just go with your gut. But on the other hand, don't start just coming up with random unjustified reasons because you're afraid to cross out one of the answer choices. If you cannot directly point to a piece of evidence within the passage that supports that answer choice, it's not it. Everything you need to know to answer the questions is in the text, right? Otherwise, it'd be impossible. You do not need to bring in any outside knowledge to do cars. That's one of the beauties of it, but also kind of leads to one of the pitfalls. So sometimes go with your gut if you really don't know, but the best way to answer the questions is to do process of elimination. And if you cannot solidly justify an answer choice, then it's not going to be the answer to the question. Number two, rushing through the passage and then rushing through the answers. In terms of rushing through the rushing through the passage, right? It comes down to usually people getting tired, right? You're just so tired of reading these dense passages that you start glazing over and you don't go in a systematic way to attack each passage. If you have not seen hundreds or thousands of passages, you're likely just not going to be able to pick up on the things that the test makers want you to pick up on without being intentional about it. Again, if a sentence jumps out to you, even just a slight bit, mark it, make a note of it. There's something that's going to be important about it. And then rushing through the answers, right? This is where time management really comes in. So like I said, it's a 90-minute section with 53 questions. So about a minute and a half per question. And there's like roughly 9 or so passages, right? So 10 minutes per passage. You want to spend about maybe 5 minutes doing a really good read through of the passage, and then the next 5 minutes answering the questions. That should give you enough time to go through each answer choice and eliminate it if it's wrong. And if you practice a time management, you can do that for each question of each passage. But if you're not good about your time management, you're going to spend way too long in the first half of cars. And the second half, you're just going to be guessing your way through, and you're going to miss easy points that you could have. And similarly, right, on the first half, if you really don't know the answer to a question, guess something and move on. Don't spend more than your allotted like 1 minute to answer that question, because it's going to hurt you and miss easy points on the back end. All right. How to critically read these passages. Again, you're going to hear me say the same things multiple times, and that's intentionally, right? Because I want you to pick up on what is my thesis, right, for this webinar. My thesis is that intentionally read the passages and be on time, right? That's what I want you to take away. Similarly, when you read the passage, what is the thesis they're making and how are they making it, right? Are they making it in a very factual way? Are they making it in a sarcastic and rhetorical way? Or are they making it in a really philosophical and flowy and beautiful way, right? And more like prose. So it's not just what they're saying, but it's how they're saying it. And then what is the person's like background, right? Um, that's like me saying that uh, broccoli is the greatest vegetable on the planet, and I am a broccoli farmer, right? There's going to be inherent biases or assumptions that the author is presenting that's going to influence their argument. So try to identify those. And then again, what is the primary thesis? How are they supporting it? Are they doing with facts? Are they doing with metaphors and prose? Or are they not doing it at all? And then are they doing anything to refute it? Are they comparing both sides of their argument, or are they just one-sided? All right. So cars, again, is something that requires a lot of practice. Obviously, the number one thing you want to do is get through the AAMCQ bank, right? You should do every single cars passage the AAMC provides, because that is the gold truth, the gold standard. A lot of third-party resources, they're close, but they're not perfect. So do all the AAMC material. And then what can you do on a daily basis, right? No one's studying for 24 hours a day. You got other stuff to do. But there are ways you can bring cars into your life, right? Read some op-eds in like New York Times, or essays or editorial, whatever you can, just to get more exposure to language and argument building and the way that people write. And I think this is really important if you are an international student, because you're probably, a lot of the passages that are presented in the MCAT are going to be written in like Americanized English, typically by American writers. And so you want to see as much of that as you can, because there is a difference in the way that kind of English is spoken and written around the world. And you want to be, they're just nuances in tone and rhetoric that you can only pick up by reading as much as you can. And then as you keep reading, you're going to get faster and faster at it and be able to present that argument, because it's just going to come naturally to you. So practice is really important here. All right. Kind of going on that, read as much as you can, read a diverse diversity of material, right? And then when you're doing cars question specifically, you want to start maybe on time, that's fine, just to get a feel for it, but then get to that timed mark. You need to be at that 10-minute per passage mark when you take the MCAT. If it's any longer, you're not going to get through the whole section. And there are easy points, I promise, that you're going to miss and then you're going to beat yourself up about. So practice the time. And then again, it's not passive reading, it is active reading. What is the author's thesis statement and argument, and why are they making it? Why are they passionate about what they're saying? And then again, the best way to know that you know something is to be able to teach it. This is where Study Buddy really comes in handy, especially when it comes to MCAT testing. Someone that you can talk through passages or questions about is going to boost your own performance, because you're not going to just, there's sometimes a tendency to just kind of fool yourself, right? That you know what's happening, you know what you're doing, but you need that outside perspective, right? To keep you on your toes. So work with somebody, whether it's a counselor or a peer or a study buddy, find somebody to talk about this section with. I think this is more kind of talking about the same things we have, but break a passage down, keep a steady pace, right? When you get to question 26, you should be halfway done with the section. If you're not, then you got to pick it up, right? So keep an eye on the clock, right? Look at it after each passage. About 10 minutes should have passed. If not, you need to make some adjustments. You can't just kind of ignore the clock until the end. And then obviously each passage is different. You might naturally find that you're better at some passages than others, some that are more humanities based or social sciences based. And so you want to get through the ones you're good at quicker so you can have time for the more difficult ones. And within each passage, right, some questions are just going to be pretty straightforward. And they're more fact-based. And then there's going to be some that are more kind of just confusing and vague, and you have to kind of interpret what is being said in the question and in the passage. So keep these three things in mind. Again, it sounds vague. I know you're probably hoping there might be like more of a magic trick that I could tell you, but the magic trick here is to do practice. All right. How to improve? Again, talk to somebody, whether it's an expert or a peer or a study buddy, right? Don't just be tunnel visioned into thinking that you're getting a hang on cars. Always make sure you're talking to somebody about it, and that get tricks from other people, right? The more information and opinions you can solicit, the better tricks you're going to find that might make you faster. And then track your progress, right? I know with the MCAT's really tough. The first time you start studying and you do it like a diagnostic test, you get a score that is almost certainly not what you want or hoping for, and it can be kind of demoralizing. But it's that trend that is so rewarding. So when you do these practices, do them in the most consistent and appropriate scenario possible that is similar to the real deal. Because, if you just do untimed practice tests for 8 weeks until the MCAT and you get to the MCAT and you have no time management, you've only hurt yourself along the way. So you got to get that score or that feedback along the way so you can make tweaks to how you're approaching cars. And if you need to talk to anybody on how to do better. Again, when you're doing practice, quality matters. Again, do it in a real life setting. Do intentional reading. Don't just, volume is important, but it's not the key here. You're not going to get anything if you just blitz through 100 passages and gain nothing from it, right? When you do a question and you get it right, make sure you know why you got it right and not because you just guessed. And if you got it wrong, know why you got it wrong. A lot of these resources, right? In the one we're going to go through today, they have really well thought out explanations. And so read those carefully. Figure out what you missed, right? Was this a question I missed because I just didn't pay enough attention to the passage and it's like more on me? Or is this a content issue because I didn't understand a word they were saying or some of the language or the tone in which they're saying it? So there's two different reasons why you could have missed it, and figure out which one it is so you can figure out what you need to improve on. And then the mental aspect of it, right? And I think this is an underrated part of studying for the MCAT and taking the MCAT. It is just as much a content and practice test as it is a mental test. It is grueling. For many of you, it is the first test you're going to do that is this long. The longest thing you probably have done so far is maybe like a final in a college class that was up to like 3 hours. This is 8 hours of multiple different subjects. Fortunately, it's the first of many tests like this you're going to take in the med school process, but you need to be in the right headspace and mindset when you're doing cars, because if you're getting flustered or kind of agitated or just anxious, you're not going to do that intentional active reading that we talked about to get the questions right. So take a deep breath with you before each passage, before each question, whatever it may be, and just do your best to be as focused as you can.
Okay, can we see where you can see my screen, everyone, correct?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on this.
All right. So for the next bit, this is something we like to do to try to make this a little interactive. So we're going to go through a passage in the Inspira MCAT practice test, right? This is really similar to an actual passage you would see on the MCAT. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly scroll down this. So what I want you to do is take those lessons we talked about. I know it's going to be tricky because you're not going to have this like pulled up for the entire time, but each paragraph, I want you to pick out a sentence or a phrase to sum it up, write it down on your piece of paper, right? And then when we get to the end, I want you to also figure out what is this overall argument that this author's making, right? And then once everybody's done reading, we're going to start doing some questions. And I want you to all put in the chat box on what you think the answer to each question is. This is not to fame or shame or call out anybody, right? This is purely for your own learning. I think it really does make a difference when you put your answer out in the world, because that means you've thought through it and you're confident about it and you're taking a shot. The worst thing you can do is not take a shot, right? So make a guess on what you think is right, and then we'll go through the different answer choices and why they're right or wrong. And I'll try to help you understand on how to attack the passage like this. So for now, read each paragraph carefully, note down the summary for each paragraph, note down any sentences that jump out at you, right? Is there just something that's really provocative being saying, or a tonal shift or a metaphor that's being used? And then we'll talk about it together. So go ahead and start reading passage 7, and then we'll scroll down on a little bit to the rest of it.
And feel free to let me know when you're ready and I can scroll down.
Okay. I think we can scroll down.
Do you have any additional tips or tricks or anything that they can keep in mind while reading?
Yeah, I know. I think it really does come down to being active about, and you'll see in this, and this is a great passage that highlights, like, there's some words or just like this language, like this is not how you talk, right, to your friends or anybody that you're not gonna call them abhorrent. So it's gonna feel a little off-putting, but you just have to be as as intentional and active about it as possible. And that's why writing down the summary of each paragraph means that you did your best to pay attention to it. And like I'll give a couple like keywords, right? So the paragraph at the top here, uh, its forceful pages remind me of the sounding of the great bells in the watchtowers of the cities of the Middle Ages, which called the citizens to arms to protect their homes, to the liberties and happiness, right? That's a pretty strong sentence in just like the tone and the words they're using, right? It's talking about calling citizens to arms. And so sentences like that are going to be pretty powerful and worth highlighting for when you get down to the questions.
Would you like me to keep scrolling?
Yes, please. Okay, I think we can scroll.
So I think this is a really great time to answer one of the questions. Somebody has said, what advice do you have for slower readers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that's something that can come up a lot on cars because, again, these are difficult passages to get through. So, one tip is just going to be seeing as much material as you can that's written like this because that's what's going to help you get faster. Um, and then timing yourself, right? When you mean slower, it's how much slower, right? And so you need to work yourself up by timing to get to that really 5 minute per passage of passage reading. You need to get to the mark as fast as you can. I think vocabulary is another thing that can typically help if like that's the reason you're getting caught up, or if you're getting caught up because you kind of read this paragraph, realize you didn't get anything from it, and then you're going back and rereading. And in that sense, you just need to be more intentional about the first time you go through it. So I guess my point is there's a couple different reasons why it might take you longer to get through a passage, and that's fine. That can be improved pretty quickly, but it depends why it's taking so long. And there's different ways to fix that. One thing I want you to kind of key on, right? We talked about biases and assumptions. So this text is written by William T. Hornaday. And then this last paragraph, he is quoting a society which says that there's no one better in the world for this than William T. Hornaday. So, right? So when we talk about biases and assumptions that the author is presenting, this is a perfect example of one that um, is this really a fair person to be making this argument, which he is in this passage. So I know that was tough. I know that was quick. So let's go down to actually before we get to the question, can we go to let's go to the first paragraph. Thank you, Andrea. So what I want you all to do is tell me in the chat box or speak up if you want. What do you think is the point of the first paragraph? If you had to boil it down to like a couple words or a phrase on what is being said in the first paragraph, what would you say? There's no right or wrong answers. I just kind of want to hear what your thoughts are.
Ariaman, you can also annotate the presentation. So if there's anything you want to underline or point to,
Great.
You should have access to that.
Yes, I see that. Thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, perfect. You guys nailed it, right? Like we talked about, the preservation, and it's one of the foremost duties, right? It's a pretty strong word that they're using. It's an imperative duty, right? So you want to key on the type of language that being used. It's a very forceful type of language. It'll be too late. It's imperative. It's foremost, right? Must be employed. Very definitive, strong words. So great. I think you guys nailed that. Let's try one more paragraph. So let's go to the third paragraph, the one with the alarm. See if I can get rid of that. Perfect. Actually, sorry. Let's go to the fourth paragraph. I apologize. The next one. Okay, great. Yeah. So take a look at this paragraph and let me know what you guys think the point of this paragraph is.
If you'd like to actually speak, um, let us know in the chat and we can unmute. I think this one has them stumped.
This one's a little trickier, but I think it's important. And actually, this one does come up in the question. So you guys nailed the first paragraph. Let's see if you guys can kind of figure out what this paragraph is saying. Okay, so I see must protect or will be destroyed. I think that is an important point. That's not the key point of this paragraph. So again, I think you want to look for nature is art. Yeah, I think that's getting closer. So you want to understand kind of the shift that is being made, and it's not necessarily a shift, but it's how this person is making contrasting arguments. So the first three paragraphs that we kind of scrolled through, and the first one you nailed was that we must preserve nature at this point, otherwise it's getting too late. All right, that is really the author's kind of big thesis statement. Now, what kind of contrasting or supporting arguments is this author making? And I think this sentence is really important. We no longer destroy great works of art. So he's saying that we destroy nature, but we don't destroy art. And so that is a direct comparison that is being made. This author is saying that art is treasured and respected, but nature is not. And I think the rest of this goes on to continue to support that, right? We don't respect our animals. We use birds of paradise to take their plumes or their feathers and decorate hats, right? Which goes into rubbish. This is all, this is all kind of saying similar things. But the point of this paragraph is that we respect art, but not nature. And it shouldn't be like that. And so that's kind of what I want you to take away from this paragraph specifically. So I think this is probably a good time. We'll go ahead and go to the first question. And I know it's going to be a little tricky because you guys don't have the passage pulled up, but do your best based on remember to figure out how you would answer this question. So again, in the chat box, just type in A, B, C, or D. I promise you, I'm not going to call you out, or it doesn't matter what you put down, but give it your best shot. So question one, which of the following types of arguments does the author fail to utilize in this passage?
I also put a link to the practice test we're looking at that we have on our screens in the chat, so you can pull it up on your end as well.
Thank you, Andrea. And again, don't miss this word here, right? This is the easy way to miss points because it's not which argument does he use, it's which one does he fail to use.
We have a couple of responses in the chat.
Great. So let's go ahead and talk through this question. So which arguments does the author fail to use in this passage? So basically, which arguments is the author using in this one, right? So the first one that comes up is A, right? The use of analogies meant to draw upon images familiar to the audience. Um, this one is definitely in there, and this is kind of the one I highlighted earlier, right? Where he says it is this book is an alarm call. It reminds me of the bells of the towers of the cities in the Middle Ages, right? That is a direct analogy. The book is being compared to an alarm bell. And obviously we didn't live in the Middle Ages, but hopefully that invokes an image in your head that you can kind of create. So it's not A, right? So then look at B. Appeals to authority and claims of demonstrated past success. So this is also not entirely correct, because he does make an effort to establish like his own credibility, right? And that goes kind of at the end, like that paragraph we highlighted. He puts in a paragraph from the New York Zoological Society that says he is the authority and the foremost figure on this. And there are parts of the passage where he talks about his past success. So he does utilize this argument by saying, hey, look at me. I'm great. I know my stuff. You should listen to me. All right. So then we get to answer choice C, the offering of normative judgments that are meant to motivate action. So what does that mean, right? That means, is he making statements that say that you need to start taking action? And this is pretty apparent in the first paragraph that we talked about, right? He used words like foremost duty, imperative duty, must, it will be too late, right? So he is making statements that are trying to influence you to take action to preserve nature. So he does use that. So the one that the actual answer to this question is D, philosophical justification, sorry. There's actually nothing in this passage that is really philosophical. Everything is either based in some sort of analogy or his own credibility. But by philosophical, that would be more like abstract, like talking about harmony and God or religion or justice or something that's just more abstract. And that would be more of a philosophical justification and not what's in this paragraph. All right. So I hope that you're kind of seeing where we're trying to go with these, and that's why paying attention to each paragraph is important, because answer choice A, you could have ruled out by looking at by paying attention to the alarm bell paragraph. Answer choice B, pay attention to the last paragraph. Answer choice C, pay attention to the first paragraph. Everything is rooted in a part of the passage. You just have to make sure you're remembering it. All right. Let's look at question 37. So the author supports his overarching claim by arguing for the importance of all of the following except. Again, don't ignore the word except. So which ones is the author using? And I think this is another one where vocabulary can really matter, right? So can somebody kind of tell me what they think clemency means?
Don't Google it.
It's totally fine. So, clemency, it means, yeah, great. So, these are not words that we use on a regular basis. It's really difficult. And so, great point, Leah. Clemency means mercy, forgiveness, right? Like words like that. So it's really important to know that, right? Expediency, to be on time, to be rapid, to do things, in a timely manner. Posterity means forever, for the future. Longevity. Consistency, I think everybody knows that one, right? Being regular. So you got to know what the words mean if you want to do the answer, if you want to get the answer right. So thank you, Thomas, for putting in an answer. And in fact, actually, the answer is A. So let's talk about it. It's a great job, Thomas. Clemency, mercy, right? It's really the exact opposite in this paragraph. He is not being very merciful at all, and he's saying that all of us really suck and need to do a better job, and blaming humans in a lot of way for destroying nature. There's no forgiveness or mercy in this. Is there expediency? Absolutely. Again, let's point to a paragraph. Paragraph 1, foremost duty, immediate, must, right? There's a lot of emphasis on getting things done quickly before it becomes too late. There should be no question that the expediency is there. Posterity, there are many times in this passage where the author mentions that things must be preserved for a long time because in the future, in the coming generations, they need to have nature. And then consistency. It's consistency in the consistency of the actions humans take, right? What paragraph to point to? The paragraph about the art, the one that we reviewed, right? That paragraph should have stuck out to you because he's making a comparative argument. He's saying that if we preserve art, why don't we preserve nature, right? We need to be consistent in that. Again, my point comes down to know the vocabulary, and each answer choice that is can be ruled out. You can point to a specific paragraph about it. And if you couldn't point to a specific paragraph, that means it's likely the right answer to the question. All right. I think we still have time. So let's go ahead and do one more question.
Awesome. We do have a couple questions in the chat as well.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll do the last question and we'll.
Sorry, everyone. Perfect.
And the key to this question is this is not a claim the author is making, but if he were to, which one would he pick, right? Which one is in the same tone and voice and point that agrees with the author's own points?
Thomas says C.
Perfect. So let's go through the answer choices here. All right. So answer choice 1. Conservation is primarily a matter of convincing the public who, once they understand the need for action to preserve wildlife, will act wholeheartedly and with speed, right? So the authors, excuse me, trying to say that it's not just a matter of, excuse me, trying to convince the public. Like we have been trying that, and it's more than just convincing the public. And I would point to paragraph 1, where he says every possible means of preservation must be used: sentimental, educational, and legislative. Right? It's not enough to just educate the public. It's not enough to play on their emotions. There must be laws enacted to preserve nature. So it's not just a matter of convincing, it's actually forcing people to start preserving nature. And that's why it's not A. So then it's a B, right? A significant change has occurred in the mind of the public such that permanent damage to the environment can be successfully avoided. In fact, the opposite, right? The whole point and the whole tone of this author's passage is that it's too late, right? Or it's about to be too late. And that it's going to be really hard to reverse what's been done. And the fact that he's saying that it's probably going to be impossible to make a significant change in the mind of the public, and that we need to do more. So the one, again, you want to look for words that are really definitive and don't allow for any leeway. Like words like always or never or permanent, right? If it's a very definitive word, then there's a high chance it's going to be wrong, or like you need to pay more attention to it. So we look at awesome answer choice C, right? The purpose of the call of action is not just to preserve yada yada, right? But to allow the flourishing. I think that's pretty clear. That is um, the point of the passage, right? It's to save nature for us and the future generations. And then why is it not answer choice D? So destruction of the environment can be largely attributed to ill-willed individuals. That's not true, or not what the author is saying, right? Um, there's a specific phrase in the passage where he says, "It is not savages nor primitive men who are harming the environment, but men and women who boast of their civilization." So it's not from the ill-willed or the uneducated or the villains. It's actually from everybody, even the ones who are highly educated. So it comes down to all of us. So again, I know that was pretty quick, and we tried to get through as much as we can. But the thing I want you to all to take away from this is that every answer choice that is incorrect has a reference to a point in the passage. And if you can't make that connection, then either it's not the right answer, or you just need to go back and read it a little more carefully. So cars is tricky, but practice truly does make perfect on this. Andre, you said there's a couple questions in the chat. Is that right?
Absolutely. So just before we go to the Q&A, we have about 5 minutes left. We would love your assistance. So we obviously take a lot of time to work on these and really try and perfect them and improve them. So if you could take a minute or two to answer just a couple of questions and provide us with some feedback, so then we're able to continue doing these and offering better guidance each time, we would absolutely appreciate it. You will also get a follow-up where you will have a link to do that. So if you don't want to do it right now, you will have plentiful of opportunities to do so. Awesome. Okay, so there's 2 or 3 questions in the chat. One was about the slow reader. The other one was talking about sort of how to review the passage, the sections, and I think we did a great job of answering that. There's an individual in here who says they're taking the MCAT in 2 weeks, but they haven't done much of cars practice. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a couple of things here. One is, are you ready to take the MCAT in 2 weeks, right? Is your practice score where you want it to be? And what are the sections that you have the largest room for improvement on? If it is cars and you're confident and comfortable with your other sections, then just do practice. Like I said, you should knock out every single AAMC cars passage you have available to you. If not, there's other resources. Like if there's the Inspire practice test that Andrea just sent out, right? Go through that. Go through other third-party resources that you can maybe find. So just see as much as you can. And again, if you don't feel comfortable or your score is not where you're at, it is okay to postpone the MCAT, right? It's better to do it once and do it right. So it kind of depends, but I do wish you the best of luck. And if there are any like other questions or something, always just reach out to Inspire, and we'd be happy to kind of help you and see what we can do on our end to get you to the score you want.
Absolutely. We'd love to. Sorry, keep going.
No, you're totally fine. Please answer that. I'll go on to something after that.
I was just about to echo exactly what you just said. If there's anything that we can do, any sort of guidance, any sort of resources, we have a ton of free resources that we are able to send out in order to sort of help you with your own prep.
Great. Last thing I'll say, just to quickly touch on Leo's point here. When you're reviewing your answers and practice exams and you missed a question, again, boil it down to why you missed it. Is it oh my God, I had a brain fart, I was dumb kind of moment? Or is it, I just missed something content-based, I missed a point in the passage, I didn't read it correctly? And that's going to help you figure out what you need to do to improve. So again, thank you everybody for joining. From my end, I hope you enjoyed this as much as possible. And I'll let Andrea close it up.
No, that was perfectly well said. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We do these webinars weekly. So if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, we highly recommend you do so. You'll get invites, you'll be in the know, and we always encourage you to come back. We'll be doing cars, we'll be doing psych soc, we'll be doing camp. So we'll really be doing these workshops for every section of the MCAT. So we highly encourage you to be there. With that being said, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. We'll see you on the next webinar.